Welcome to Hollywood Graveyard, where we set out to remember and celebrate the lives of those who lived to entertain us by visiting their final resting places. Today we're exploring Glen Haven and Sholom Memorial Parks, where we'll find such stars as Rosemary, Vera-Ellen, Jeffrey Hunter, and many more. Join us, won't you? Turning our compass once again to the north in the San Fernando Valley, we make our way up a quiet desert canyon called Cagle Canyon to find an adjacent pair of humble cemeteries right here in the canyon. Situated on the hills that overlook Sylmar are Glen Haven and Sholom Memorial Parks. We'll begin at Glen Haven, where the searing July sun has scorched dry much of the grounds, and scorched your host as well. Don't worry though, I brought plenty of water. It's quiet and peaceful up here, so far removed from the city. This cemetery was founded in the early 1940s. Following the road into the main entrance, we reach Brigham Park section on the right. Next to the road is Harry Cording. He was a British actor known for playing villainous characters in films from the 20s through the 50s. Among his best-known roles are as one of the villains in Adventures of Robin Hood, alongside Errol Flynn, and as Bela Lugosi's henchman in Black Cat. He would also appear in several of the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes series, starring Basil Rathbone. The symbol here on his marker is a moose. Cording belonged to a fraternity called the Loyal Order of the Moose. He died at age 63. Northeast of here is Roselawn section on the left. Herein we find several members of the Keaton family. The matriarch of the Keaton family was Myra Keaton. As a teenager, she traveled and performed with her father's medicine show in the late 19th century. On the road, she would meet and marry Joe Keaton, and they would begin performing together on the vaudeville circuit. They had a son named Buster, who would perform with them as a child, and they would become known as the Three Keatons. Buster Keaton would go on to become one of the legendary pioneers of silent comedies. Myra appeared in small roles in a handful of her son's films. She lived to be 78. Myra and Joe would have two more children, son Harry and daughter Louise. Louise had a small acting career, appearing mainly in roles in her brother's films. She was also the frequent stand-in for Norma Talmadge. After her death in 1981 at age 74, she was interred here with her mother, though there is no marker for her. In the unmarked grave to the left is middle child Harry, known as Jingles. He was named after family friend Harry Houdini, and dubbed Jingles for the noises he made as a child with his toys. He too would perform on stage with his family, and occasionally on screen in Buster's films. He even had a minor role in 1933's King Kong. After his death in 1983 at age 78, he was laid to rest here, next to his mother and sister. Buster is buried at Forest Lawn, Hollywood Hills, and Joe is at Inglewood. Hopping across the street north to Olive section, in the shade of a tree, we find Jeffrey Hunter. Fans of Star Trek will recognize him as the original captain of the Enterprise, Captain Christopher Pike, in the pilot episode of Star Trek. The footage was later used in the episode The Menagerie.
We aren't going to go? To be certain?
Not without any indication of survivors, no. Continue on to the Vega colony and take care of our own sick and injured first. We have the helm. Maintain present course.
Yes, sir.
When the first pilot was rejected, Hunter left the series. He was then replaced by William Shatner as Captain Kirk in the second pilot. Hunter's main focus was in films, known for his hit roles in movies like The Searchers and as Jesus in King of Kings. In 1968, he was injured in an on-set explosion, suffering a severe concussion. A few months later, he suffered an intracranial hemorrhage, falling and striking his head. He underwent surgery, but would pass away in the hospital at age 42. Just months before his death, Hunter married actress Emily McLaughlin. She's best known for her long-running role as Nurse Jessie Brewer in the daytime soap opera General Hospital. She would perform in over 300 episodes from the series' inception in 1963 until 1991. She was nominated for a Golden Globe for the role. The the first actress nominated for a Golden Globe for a daytime soap. And being the Twilight Zone fan that I am, I have to mention that she also had a role in the 1961 episode, The Jungle. Emily died from cancer at age 62. Following the road northwest, we reach the other end of Roselawn section. Here is the grave of dancer and actress Vera-Ellen. Along with the likes of Eleanor Powell and Ginger Rogers, Vera-Ellen became one of Hollywood's favorite on-screen dancing performers in musical films of the 40s and 50s. In her early years as a dancer, she became one of the youngest Rockettes at Radio City Music Hall in New York. Samuel Goldwyn spotted her and cast her alongside Danny Kaye in Wonder Man in 1945. She would go on to dance and perform with major stars of the era, from Fred Astaire to Gene Kelly, in films like On the Town and The Belle of New York. She's perhaps best remembered for her role alongside Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, and Rosemary Clooney in the Christmas classic, White Christmas. She would go on to be a regular performer on television variety programs like The Perry Como Show and The Dinah Shore Show. By the 1960s, she retired from performing, living to be 60, until cancer took her life in 1981. Across the street west is Acacia section. This is where we find the final resting place of Anne Cornwall. She was named a Wampus Baby Star in 1925. As an actress, she's best known for playing Buster Keaton's girlfriend in the 1927 film College, as well as for her role alongside Laurel and Hardy in 1929's Men o' War. She died in 1980 at age 83 and was laid to rest here, though her grave remains unmarked. Let's turn northeast now to Poplar section. Here lies actress Ella Raines. The dark, exotic beauty is known for roles in films noir and crime dramas of the 40s, including lead roles in the films Phantom Lady, Impact, and The Web. On television, she played the lead role in the series Janet Dean, Registered Nurse from 1954 to 1955. Ella even appeared on the cover of Life magazine in 1944. She died from cancer at age 67. The next section north is Sycamore. Fans of The Dick Van Dyke Show will recognize this next name. Here is Rose Marie, beloved by television audiences for her role as the wisecracking Sally Rogers on The Dick Van Dyke Show, a role which she would play in over 100 episodes from 1961 to 1966. The role would earn her 3 Emmy nominations.
What are you worried about? You're going on the television, do a couple of stale jokes.
You've done the Stevie Parsons show a dozen times. Why are you suddenly afraid?
I know, Robert. I've used up all my best stories.
So dazzle them with your beauty.
Oh, thanks, buddy. I don't need flattery. I need a joke.
That was a joke.
Hey, I'll settle for the flattery, huh?
But you probably know that Rose Marie's career began decades earlier. In fact, she was one of Hollywood's most enduring entertainers over her 94 years. At the age of 3, she began performing under the name Baby Rose Marie, and by the age of 5 was a major singing star on the radio. At the height of her fame in the late 20s and 30s, Baby Rose Marie made numerous records and would appear in a handful of films. After a brief hiatus, she would return to stage and screen, no longer Baby Rose Marie, simply Rose Marie, in films like Top Banana. Television soon came calling, where she found her place in The Dick Van Dyke Show and The Doris Day Show, among others. The show business legend died of natural causes in 2017 at the age of 94. Across the street north are the Chapel Terrace crypts. Within this outer wall, we find the crypt of Jerry Fielding. He was a film composer, known for his bold and experimental approach to film and television music in the 60s and 70s. He began his career arranging and directing music for radio programs. In the 50s, he was caught up in the Red Scare. Though never a communist, he refused to name names before the House Un-American Activities Committee and was subsequently blacklisted for nearly a decade. Filmmaker Otto Preminger was among those in the 60s who fought to expose the wrongs of innuendo and political blacklisting, and intentionally hired blacklisted artists like Dalton Trumbo and Jerry Fielding to work on his films. Fielding's scoring career would quickly rise. his film scores earning him 3 Oscar nominations for The Wild Bunch, Straw Dogs, and The Outlaw Josie Wales. His television music includes a couple episodes of Star Trek and the themes for shows like Hogan's Heroes and The Bionic Woman. He died from a heart attack at age 57 while scoring a film titled, ironically, Funeral Home. In The West Wing, just left of here, is Stanley Andrews. The character actor is perhaps best remembered as the voice of Daddy Warbucks on the popular 30s radio program, Little Orphan Annie. He would go on to become a familiar face in Western television, most notably as the Old Ranger in close to 300 episodes of Death Valley Days. He would also amass hundreds of film credits to his name throughout his career, like Captain Harmon in Road to Rio. He lived to be 77. Back to the road, let's circle around to section 4. In a ways from the road is the grave of Monte Collins. He was an actor and writer whose career began performing in circuses and minstrel shows. He would become a regular supporting player in silent comedies and later talkies, frequently working with filmmaker Jules White. He would appear with comedic legends like Buster Keaton, Harry Langdon, and Charlie Chase. Collins would also contribute visual gags and work as a writer and dialogue coach behind the scenes. Among the films he wrote include The Green Promise and Tangier. Monte Collins was on the verge of launching a television career in the 1950s when he died of a heart attack. That's all we'll find here at Glen Haven. Let's hop over next door to Sholom. En route across the street, we find this little gem. A World War II cannon captured by our brave men at Okinawa. Sholom is a Jewish cemetery which opened shortly after Glen Haven in the early 50s. Just a handful of stars to find in this little cemetery. On the east side of the main road is Him Solomon section. A few spaces in from the road, we find the grave of Bernard Gorcey. Born in Russia, Gorcey came to the US to perform on vaudeville and eventually the Broadway stage. His breakout role was in A.B.'s Irish Rose, which ran from 1922 to 1927. His first big screen role came in 1928 when he reprised his role in the film version of A.B.'s Irish Rose. Bernard would later encourage his sons to try acting and audition for a role in the play Dead End. Leo and David Gorcey would become famous for their roles as members of the group of young hooligans known as the Dead End Kids, the East Side Kids, and the Bowery Boys, in a popular series of films beginning in the 1930s. And Bernard would star alongside his sons in dozens of these films as Louis. He also appeared as Charlie Chaplin's meek Jewish neighbor in The Great Dictator. He died from injuries sustained in a car accident. Curtain up 1884, curtain down 1955. Several rows south in this same section, we find the final resting place of comedic actor Len Lesser, known to fans of the 90s sitcom Seinfeld as Uncle Leo.
Jerry! Hello!
Hello, Uncle Leo! Leo, I saw you in Brentano's yesterday.
Why don't you say hello?
Because you were too busy stealing a book.
You still say hello?
Lesser also had a recurring role as Garvin on Everybody Loves Raymond. But his television appearances stretch back to the 50s, delighting audiences in everything from the Munsters to the Untouchables. He made appearances in film as well, including Birdman of Alcatraz and Kelly's Heroes. Lesser died in 2011 from cancer-related pneumonia at the age of 88. As of filming, his grave is unmarked. Finally, we proceed further south into Mount Nebo section. Not far from the eastern fence is the grave of Michael Strong. A graduate of the Actors Studio, Strong would go on to perform in the plays of Arthur Miller and Eugene O'Neill. He then found his way to film and television, with roles in classics like Point Blank, Patton, and The Great Santini. And Star Trek fans will recognize him for his role as Dr. Corby on the original series.
It's still me, Christine. Roger. I'm in here. You can't imagine how it was. I was frozen, dying.
He would continue to make guest appearances on television until his death in 1980 from cancer at the age of 62. And that concludes our tour. What are some of your favorite memories of the stars we visited today? Share them in the comments below, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more famous grave tours. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. If you could use a little cheering up during these difficult times, here's Winnie the Pooh, sitting on a giant teddy bear.